Hello everyone, hope all of you are safe and healthy. Welcome to IAS Baba's Rapid Revision Series for Prelims 2021. This is session 68 and day 94, and the topic we have is International Financial Institutions. So these are the hot topics we are going to discuss. The first two, they go with the guessworks as usual, and then the third one, E-Rupee, and then the fourth one, SEZs, then the NIMZ, the National Investment and Manufacturing Zones, then the TRIPS and TRIPS Plus, and then the FAO, then the World Bank, then the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and then the Asian Development Bank. Now coming to the first one, the guesswork. Along with the budget, the finance minister also places other documents before the parliament, which include the macroeconomic framework statement. Friends, we know that the macroeconomic framework statement, it comes with the FRBM Act. So no prize for guessing. We tick the answer D, and we shall not disrespect UPSC by guessing even this answer. Then come to next one. The constitutional government by definition is a, friends, this is a conceptual question. So before going to the options, we will conceptualize what is a constitutional government. Friends, constitutional government is a government in which constitution is supreme. So all powers and limitations, they come from the constitution itself for the government. Now come to options. Government by legislature. Friends, the government by legislature is a legislative government where legislature is supreme. So this cannot be a constitutional government because in constitutional government, the constitution is supreme. Then popular government. Friends, several popular governments wherein democracy is there, they do not have codified constitution at all. For example, Israel, Canada, New Zealand, they do not have codified constitution. Then multi-party government. Friends, Nepal has multi-party government. It has proportional representation, but still it is struggling to frame a constitution. So without constitution, the Nepal is working. So multi-party government cannot be a reason for that. Then limited government. So friends, this seems to be formidable because the limitations, it comes from the constitution. Best example is the fundamental right. So if you have that conceptual understanding, then straight away you can take limited government without analyzing this much for all these above options. Or if the POBAT students, if you have learnt about constitutionalism, then you can straight away hit this. Then come to next one. Other than the fundamental rights, which of the following parts of Constitution of India reflect or reflects the principle and provisions of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? Friends, here the advantage of minusculity we will take into consideration. So preamble, directive principles of state policy, fundamental duties. We cannot say that any clause, any statement, any sentence of this cannot have a reflection towards the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So there will be one or the other clause, there will be one or the other word, at least a keyword, which will reflect the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is a broader principle. So all have to be included. So straight away we tick up that D as the option. Then come to next one. In India, the legal service authorities provide free legal services to which of the following type of citizens? Friends, here we take up ethical reasoning. So friends, in ethical reasoning, we know that the free legal aid is provided only for the downtrodden people. So here we look for the bottom of the pyramid people, that is the poorest of the poor, and those people who are suffering from social persecutions. Now first one, person with an annual income of less than rupee 1 lakh. So this 1 lakh is very less, so this can be a formidable option. Then transgender with an annual income of less than rupees 2 lakh. Yes, even this can be formidable option. Friends, transgenders, they suffer from the social persecution over and above the economic persecution. So this increase in the income limit to 2 lakh will not be a surprise. Then the member of other backward classes with an annual income of less than rupees 3 lakh. So friends, here the OBCs also, they suffer from social persecution. So this increase in the income from 1 lakh to 3 lakh shall not be a surprise at all. Then coming to fourth one, all senior citizens. Friends, here all is a problem here. So not the retired IAS officers, the retired IPS officers, they shall receive the free legal aid. So this 4 can be striked out. So now in the options, the B and D will be striked out because they contain 4. Now A and C are the formidable options. Now in A, 1 and 2 is there, in C 2 and 3 are there. So 2 is present in both. We will check for only 1 and 3. So first one, the person with an annual income of less than 1 lakh rupee. Then a member of other backward classes with an annual income of less than rupee 3 lakh. Friends, both are equally competitive. So friends, if you come to this level and you could eliminate B and D, then straight away go and hit any of the answer. So here the chances of going wrong is only 50-50. So never leave this question. But however friends, as discussed earlier, UPSC is never a by heart exam. So this person with an annual income of less than rupee 1 lakh, this is the very first criteria for the legal service authority to provide the free legal aid. So if at all you have gone through the legal service authority anywhere in the current affairs, anywhere in any other books, then you will have read this one because it comes at the very first. So you need not buy at the whole table and all the criteria is there. So here UPSC wants you to just go through this legal service authority document and just observe what are the criteria overall. It doesn't want you to by heart. So this simple thing if you do, you will clear prelims and you will be into the mains. And hence friends, UPSC is facilitating you rather than filtering you. So mind that and work accordingly. Then come to next one. Consider the following pairs: international agreement and setup subject. So international agreement and what subject do they deal with? So this we have to match. Come to the first one, Alma Ata Declaration, healthcare of the people. So friends, this is an old topic. If you haven't read it, leave it. Then Hague Convention, biological and chemical weapons. Even if you haven't read it, leave it. Talanoa Dialogue, global climate change. So this was in current affairs. I hope you have read it in the wake of Paris Treaty. Even if you haven't read, we will keep it pending. Then Under 2 Coalition, the child rights. Friends, here the word Under 2 Coalition, it can have two meanings. That is those children who are below 2 years of age. So in that case, Under 2 Coalition will match with the child rights. But however friends, it can also mean that Under 2 Coalition means that coalition which deals with limiting the global temperature to below 2 degrees Celsius. And now coming to the two meanings, friends, Under 2 Coalition, if it means the children below 2 years of age, then it cannot be the child rights as a whole, because the child rights it also means below 16 years or below 18 years even. So if you have that sense, we will straight away hit it as a wrong. But however friends, limiting the global temperature to 2 degrees Celsius can be apt meaning for Under 2 Coalition, because every nation and every convention in the globe, it is aiming for that particular word, that is the 2 degrees Celsius. But here the 2 years of age is not so important, and most probably if you think otherwise, there are only under 5, that is 5 years is important here because of under 5 mortality rate, or 1 year is important because of the infant mortality rate. So this 2 years is not so important, but however 2 degrees Celsius is more important. So we will take a crude guess and strike down the fourth one. So if you strike the fourth one, B and D will be striked out. So now the options are A and C. So friends, in A 1 and 2 are there, and in C 1 and 3 are there. So 1 stands to be correct option, then 2 and 3 we will check for that. So friends, 2 is a current affairs thing, the Talanoa Dialogue, which was started in 2007. And if you have read something about the Paris Climate Treaty, then you will hit 1 and 3 as the option. So these are the today's guesswork. Then come to next one, the e-rupee. Friends, why was it in news? Because Prime Minister, he launched e-rupee on August 2021 recently. Now about e-rupee, e-rupee is a cashless and contactless instrument for digital payment. So just like Phone Pay, then Google Pay, etc., it is a contactless instrument. Then it is a QR code or SMS string based e-voucher. So it is a voucher or something like a document which is delivered to the beneficiary. So here a voucher or a document or a ticket like thing is being delivered to the beneficiary. Then the users of this seamless one-time payment mechanism will be able to redeem the voucher without a card, digital payments app or internet banking access at the service provider. So the specialty is that it doesn't require an ATM, debit or credit card. Then it doesn't require the digital payment app, the Phone Pay, Google Pay, etc. And it also doesn't require internet access or internet banking also. Then its key features, it has been developed by the National Payments Corporation of India on its UPI platform. So just like the BHIM app, it is also being developed by the National Payment Corporation of India on the UPI platform. Friends, but obvious, the rupee means the R for the Indian rupee and UPI. So this is RUPI. Then in collaboration with the Department of Financial Services, then Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and then the National Health Authority. So these facts are a bit peculiar, so we will remember them. So why Health and Family Welfare and why Health Authority should be indulged? So we will discuss that a bit later. Then e-rupee connects the sponsors of the services with the beneficiaries and service providers without any physical interface. Yes, it does it just like Phone Pay or Google Pay. Then it also ensures that payment to the service provider is made only after the service is provided. So after you availing the service, only then the payment is made, not before that. Then it is prepaid in nature. Friends, when we see all these things, it is jumbled up. We cannot know what actually e-rupee is. So now we take up an example and discuss. Friends, consider you are a farmer and you have enrolled for the PM Kisan Yojana. And as per the PM Kisan Yojana, before the season starts, that is before sowing, some amount has to be transferred to your account. But however, if 6,000 or 7,000 is transferred to your account, then you need not purchase the seed. You can spend for any other purposes. So to avoid that tendencies, what Modi government did was that instead of sending the money, they send you an voucher. So if you are having a smartphone, this QR code and a figure of such type will come to your phone, or if you do not have a smartphone, a message SMS will come to your phone. And now this SMS, it will be having some user IDs and passwords. So now you will have to go to the seed shop and you have to purchase the seed and you have to purchase the fertilizers. So after you purchase, if you show this QR code, he will scan. So that 6,000 rupees which has to be credited to your account as per the PM Kisan Yojana, it goes to the account of the seed shop. So he will be providing you the seed and money will go to him. By showing the voucher, he will scan it and money instantly transfers. So this voucher, it comes with a prepaid 6,000 rupee cash, and once you scan the QR code, then money will be deposited to his account. And even in the case of SMSs, so here in the SMS there will be one password and that password will come to your mobile, and when you say that password, and he will hit the password in his mobile and the money will be transferred to his account. So this is all about e-rupee, friends. This e-rupee cannot be used to transfer money from one person to other, just like the PhonePe or Google Pay. It is only used to transfer the government money to the service provider directly, rather than providing it to the citizens themselves. Yes friends, even our citizens are very intelligent people. So whenever the government provides any schemes, they will drink, merry-make and waste the money rather than using it constructively. So to avoid that, this scheme has brought in. Now the advantage or the usage of this e-rupee, it ensures a leakage-proof delivery of welfare services. Yes friends, here even the bureaucrats, they cannot leak the funds. So because they do not have access to funds at all. What all they have is this voucher or the QR code, and their duty is to just forward the QR code to the beneficiaries. Then it can also be used for Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. So for availing the health insurance, you can use this. So if you show the QR code to the hospital, then the hospital will automatically deduct the amount from your insurance amount. Then the fertilizer subsidies, so even in that context it can be used. So we have discussed how fertilizer subsidies or the seed subsidies can be cashed using this e-rupee. Then even the private sector can use this for their employee welfare and corporate social responsibility program. Yes friends, here the only difference is that instead of government money, the company's money is used. So here all is that whenever a fund comes from the government or a main authority, and how it is percolated to the beneficiary. So this is all about e-rupee, and it cannot be used for the person-to-person payments. So you cannot transfer this from one worker to other. So you cannot transfer your 7,000 to your relative or your neighbor so that he can avail the seeds and fertilizers. So it cannot be done. If the expiry date is over, then the voucher will be invalid. So this is all about e-rupee. I hope you have understood. Then come to next one. The SEZs. Friends, why was it in news? Because recently the special economic zones touched new heights in terms of performance in exports, investments and employments. So a huge growth in the SEZs was recorded after the first wave of lockdown, and in that context SEZs become important. Now key features. The prime objective was to enhance foreign investment and provide hassle-free environment for the exports. So basically it is for foreign investment, not the domestic investment and not the domestic manufacturing. And then it is for the hassle-free environment. So to improve the ease of doing business is also an objective of this SEZ. Then SEZs have access to duty-free imports of manufacturing inputs. Yes friends, here when we import the manufacturing inputs or the raw materials, we have to pay hefty duties, that is the import duties or the customs duties. But however, in the SEZs, no duties will be paid. So hence SEZs can be said as the foreign lands within the Indian mainland. Then no license required for the import. So as they are foreign lands themselves, license is also not required for the import. So friends, here the imports are done very quickly with the hassle-free processes. So hence they are helpful for manufacturing and other businesses. Then manufacturing or service activities are allowed. So both manufacturing and service activities can be taken up in these special economic zones. Then domestic sales are subject to full customs duty and import policy in force. Yes friends, here you can import without any hassles, but however you cannot sell this in the Indian mainland. You will have to compulsorily export the goods. But if you are selling this to the Indian mainland, then you will have to pay the full custom duty. That is, the export duty has to be paid when you sell it in the Indian markets, even though you are in the Indian mainland, but it is akin that you are bringing it from foreign and selling it. Friends, this is because SEZs should not dump their goods into the Indian mainland. So this is the purpose behind levying full customs duty for selling these SEZ goods in the Indian mainland. Then SEZ units have full freedom of subcontracting. Yes friends, the companies in the SEZ, they can outsource their activities to other companies. So subcontracting is also allowed, but however, if they are outsourcing it to some company which is outside an SEZ, then all those restrictions and rules and regulations which are levied in the cross-border subcontracting is levied here also. But however, if the subcontracting is within the SEZ itself, then no such laws are applied. So in the crude friends, if you are subcontracting to outside, then it is akin that you are subcontracting to somewhere outside the nation, or you are getting the subcontract from any foreign nation to India. So all such custom duties, rules and regulations has to be followed if the subcontracting is between the borders of the SEZs. Then come to next one, no routine examination by customs authorities for the export or import cargo. So here the relief is given from the inspections and they can do easy export and imports within the SEZ. Again an ease of doing business. Then SEZ developers or co-developers and the units or the companies, they enjoy tax benefits as prescribed in the SEZs Act. So friends, here the tax benefits are also being availed and this is also aimed towards ease of doing business. So these are the features of SEZs. Then come to more facts. The administrative setup of SEZs. Friends, the functioning of the SEZs is governed by a 3-tier administrative setup. So what are the 3-tier? The Board of Approval is the apex body and is headed by a Secretary, Department of Commerce. So this Board of Approval, it approves the units to the SEZs and usually this approves only those large companies which exceed a particular limit. So those large MNCs, when they set up companies in the SEZs, they have to take the Secretary, Department of Commerce and the Board of Approval's permission. Then the approval committee at the zone level deals with the approval of units in the SEZs and other related issues. So small companies and other developmental issues in the SEZ will be looked after by the approval committee at the zonal level. So this is like a deputy to Board of Approval. Then each zone is headed by a development commissioner who is ex officio chairperson of the approval committee. So this development commissioner, he looks into the development works and other infrastructures within the SEZs. So these are the 3-tier structures of the SEZs administrative setup. Then performance of SEZs. Friends, as we discussed earlier, SEZs are in use because of the huge performance they showed last year. So the exports of rupees 22,000 crore in 2005-06 has increased to rupees 7 lakh crore in 2021. Then investment of rupees 4,000 crore in 2005-06, but this has increased to rupees 6 lakh crore by 2021. Then employment provided was 1,34,000 persons in 2005-06 and it has increased to 23 lakh persons by 2020-21. So friends, a huge improvement is shown, but however the time period is somewhere between 15 to 16 years. So but obvious this improvement has to be done. So this is all about SEZs. Then come to next one, NIMZs. The National Investment and Manufacturing Zones are means of the National Manufacturing Policy. Yes friends, they are aimed towards enhancing the National Manufacturing Policy which aims to bring in the manufacturing sector to 25% of GDP from the current 17% of GDP. So in that context, the National Investment and Manufacturing Zones were set up and these are set up mainly with the intention of bringing up the domestic manufacturing and domestic investment. So these are not the foreign countries within the mainland. So that difference we will clarify here itself. Then the NIMZs are envisaged as integrated industrial townships with the state-of-the-art infrastructure. Yes, infrastructures are available and they are necessary as well. Then the land use on the basis of zoning. So various zones are being there and how the land has to be used, whether for primary sector, whether for the secondary or value addition. So likewise the land has been zoned. Then clean and energy efficient technology. So the clean and energy efficient technology are given priority to set up their companies there. Then necessary social infrastructure. So the corporate social responsibility, then the dormitories for the laborers and education facilities for the children of the labor, then health facilities, all those have to be provided. Then the skill development facility. So these NIMZs, they also provide training and skill development for the laborers. Then aim of the NIMZs. NIMZs aim to provide a productive environment for persons transitioning from primary to secondary and tertiary sectors. So those companies which are growing from primary to secondary and secondary to tertiary are being provided utmost encouragement and importance via this NIMZ. Then the National Manufacturing Policy, the NMP provides for promotion of clusters and aggregations. especially through creation of national investment and manufacturing zones. So friends, via this NIMZs alone, we can develop cluster-based development. So friends, these clusters and aggregations, these are one of the main strategies for picking up manufacturing in India. And even many other nations, they have succeeded via these cluster-based manufacturing units. So this NIMZ, they go a long way in moving towards this cluster-based development in the manufacturing sector of India. Then come to more facts regarding the NIMZ. NIMZ can be proposed with a land area of less than 5,000 hectares. So this 5,000 hectares is the limit for creation of NIMZ. Then the land will be selected by the state government and preference would be given to the uncultivable land. So arable and agricultural lands, they are not selected for NIMZ, but obvious they should not be as well. Then NIMZ will be managed by a special purpose vehicle headed by government officials and experts, including those of the environment. So unlike one authority, that is the board of approval in the SEZs, these NIMZs are run by the special purpose vehicle, which include the government, experts and environmental activists representation. Then to enable NIMZs to function as self-governing autonomous bodies, they will be declared by the state government as industrial townships under the Article 243Q Clause C of the Constitution. Yes friends, under Article 243, the industrial townships, the cantonment boards and others are demarcated. So here NIMZs are demarcated as the industrial townships for better functioning. And then NIMZs will be notified by the central government. So only the site selection will be made by the state government and overall approval and notification is given by the central government. Yes friends, here in this figure we can see various corridors, and in these corridors various NIMZs are being set in. Here we have Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, then Amritsar-Kolkata Industrial Corridor, then Bangalore-Mumbai Corridor, then Bangalore-Chennai Corridor, then Kochi-Bengaluru Corridor and Chennai-Vizag Corridor. So in all these areas the NIMZs are located, and they are located within the 5,000 hectares limit, which is the upper limit for NIMZ to be set up. So this is all about the NIMZs. Coming to next. TRIPS. Friends, why was it in news? Because the Biden administration announced it would support a TRIPS waiver for intellectual property protections related to COVID-19 vaccines. So there was a clamor for relieving or waivering these TRIPS clauses for COVID-19 vaccines, and Biden, who earlier didn't budge, he later budged and he later said that he was supporting the TRIPS waiver. So in this context, the TRIPS will become important. Friends, the trade related aspects of intellectual property rights is an agreement under the WTO. So this TRIPS is related to WTO agreement, and then it deals with the protection of intellectual property rights from patents to copyrights. So almost all the patents, copyrights, industrial designs, trademarks, etc., they come under this TRIPS. Then before this was negotiated, more than 50 countries did not recognize patent protection on pharmaceutical products. So basically this TRIPS, it originated to protect those pharmaceutical industries which are doing so much of hard work for preparing and inventing new drugs. Then TRIPS include minimum patent for period of 20 years and provision of product patents. So friends, minimum 20 years period was fixed by the TRIPS, and TRIPS also provided for the product patent. Product patent means one product, one patent. So for paracetamol it is one patent, and for Dolo 650 the one patent. Then come to next, TRIPS Plus. Friends, this TRIPS Plus was an advancement to TRIPS, and this was more stringent compared to the TRIPS, and that is why many developing countries, they opposed this TRIPS Plus. So what all this TRIPS Plus will include? We will discuss extending the term of patent for a longer duration than 20-year minimum. So friends, TRIPS provided only for the 20 years of patent, but in TRIPS Plus, the patent can also be extended beyond 20 years. So this was opposed by the developing countries. Then process patenting. So this process patenting means, friends, if you have different process for making the same product, then once again the patent can be provided for you for the same product for the next 20 years. For example, consider Dolo 650 tablet. And now, if the company which is producing Dolo 650, it comes up with a new process for producing the same Dolo 650 tablet, then once again this process will be given the patent. And once again, from now on, the Dolo 650 produced by this process will be having the patent for 20 more years. So in total, the same Dolo 650, it got the 40 years of patent. So this was also condemned by the developing nations, because this is helping those pharmaceutical industries who are making some small alterations in the original processes and then showing them as other process and getting the patents. So that was called evergreening. That is, patent is extending for 20, 40 and 60 years with the new tweaks and the new alterations in the processes. Then, introducing provisions that limit the use of compulsory licenses. Yes friends, this TRIPS Plus, it limited the developing countries from issuing compulsory licenses. Yes friends, if a medicine, if it is very much essential during times of pandemic and others, then compulsory licenses can be issued by the developing countries for curbing the pandemic and for extensive production of the medicine. So in that context, almost all the patent will be waived when the compulsory license is provided. But however, the TRIPS Plus, it made this compulsory licensing very stringent, and not every nation and not all the times these compulsory licenses can be issued from now on. So once again, this also harmed the developing nations. Then data exclusivity. Friends, data exclusivity means the protection to the pharmaceutical test data from the unfair commercial use. So if there is any data that is provided to the authorities during the clinical trials and others, so this data cannot be provided for any others. So this is the data exclusivity, and if we don't have access to that data, then we cannot do further inventions on that product which has been already in the market. And now, who has produced that particular medicine, only he can perform for the researchers and no others can perform, because they do not have proper data and they do not have proper knowledge regarding that medicine. So this is all about data exclusivity. Friends, all these four options, they restrict the ability of researchers and the frugal inventions of the developing nations. So that is why many developing nations, including India, they do not support this TRIPS Plus, but however, they are in compliance with the TRIPS agreement of WTO. Then come to next one, the TRIPS waiver for COVID-19 vaccines. Friends, this TRIPS waiver which was in news refers to the proposal to the WTO to waive the intellectual property rights protection for technologies needed to prevent, contain or treat the COVID-19. So for prevention, containment and treating of COVID-19, in all these areas, the TRIPS waiver was sought out. Then this should be done until the widespread vaccination is in place globally. So until almost all the people around the globe is vaccinated, this waiver has to remain. And then until the majority of the world's population have developed immunity. So until almost all the world, they have got the immunity, the waiver should be there. Now, the USA's stance on the waiver. The United States had been a major holdout to the proposal. Yes, we have discussed earlier, US was not allowing for the waiver of this patent. Then in May 2021, the United States reversed its earlier stance and announced the support for the waiver. So now, later in May 2021, Biden announced that even USA was in support of waiver. Then India and South Africa's stance. The countries had asked for the TRIPS Council to recommend as early as possible a waiver on the implementation, application and enforcement of the 4 sections in the second part of the agreement. Friends, in the agreement there are 2 parts and the waiver was sought for the second part. So what all this second part contained? These had 4 sections that pertains to copyrights, industrial designs, patents and the protection of undisclosed information. Yes friends, now what inference we can derive is that as per the opinion of India and South Africa, so almost all the patents regarding the implementation, application and enforcement of the copyrights, industrial designs, patents and undisclosed information, so all these have to be waived and an open environment has to be created for the invention of COVID-19 vaccine. So this was the debate that went on regarding the TRIPS waiver. Then come to next one, the FAO. The Food and Agriculture Organization is a specialized agency of United Nations that leads the international efforts to defeat the hunger. Yes friends, this is aimed for defeating the hunger across the world. Then about FAO, in Quebec City, Canada, the first session of United Nations established the Food and Agriculture Organization as a specialized UN agency. So it is a specialized UN agency and it was established at the very first session of United Nations. Then its headquarters is in Rome. So in Italy, Rome, it is having its headquarters. Then the 1961 Freedom from Hunger campaign is a milestone for FAO. After this, it significantly contributed to turning the organization from a technical agency into a development organization. So from then on, that is from 1961 onwards, this FAO, it left technical jobs and it started development jobs, that is encouraging the developing and underdeveloped nations to take up anti-hunger schemes and to defeat the hunger everywhere in the world. Then in 1963, FAO and UN General Assembly adopted parallel resolutions that established World Food Programme to deliver urgent food aid in real time to affected areas. So friends, there were war-ravaged and other affected areas. To tackle hunger in those areas, the World Food Programme was launched and it was launched in 1963. Then in 1979, the 20th session of FAO conference took the unanimous decision of observing World Food Day annually on 16th October in honor of the foundation of FAO. So this World Food Day is celebrated on the day of foundation of FAO. Even that we will remember. Then come to more facts regarding FAO. The functions or the approach of FAO, that is working with the countries to develop and implement agreements, codes of conduct and technical standards regarding nutrition and hunger. Then collecting, analyzing and monitoring agricultural data and information to support policy decisions. So in the field of agriculture also, this has a crucial role. Then enabling policy dialogue at global, regional and country level. So almost all the conventions, conferences and dialogues are being taken up by FAO. Then working in partnership with wide range of institutions including international and regional organizations, universities, governments, civil societies and private sector. So all these institutes are being involved in the research, development, publication and awareness creation. Then building the capacity of the countries to meet their agriculture development goals. Yes friends, the financial technical needs are being provided for the developing countries to build anti-hunger schemes. Then capturing and sharing knowledge with internally and with the partners. Yes friends, with all the stakeholders, the knowledge is shared. So basically food fortification and other knowledges are being shared. Then the last one, communicating about the work. So awareness creation, publication, reports are also the part of FAO. And here in this figure we can see the targets that are being set up by the FAO, that is 80% increase in poultry, then cattle and buffalo livestock numbers, and then the drinking water facility, and then the cereals, and then the biofuels and vegetables, potatoes, all these are included under the FAO. So this is a brief account on FAO. Then come to next one, the World Bank. Friends, it was founded in 1944 as the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. As the IBRD, it was found. Then originally its loan helped rebuilding countries which were devastated by the World War II. So for the World War II victim nations, this was set up. Then the World Bank is like a cooperative made up of 189 member countries. So it is a 189 member nations cooperative society. Then these member countries or shareholders are represented by the Board of Governors, who are ultimate policy makers at the World Bank. So the Board of Governors, these are the representatives of all the 189 member countries. Then generally the governors are the member countries' ministers of finance or ministers of development. So the representatives are basically the ministers. The ministers of finance are development ministers. Then the World Bank Group is a unique global partnership which consists of 5 development institutions. So what are those 5 development institutions? We will see in the next slide. Before that, the mission of the World Bank to end extreme poverty, that is by reducing the share of the global population that lives in extreme poverty to 3% by 2030. So this is one of the foremost goals of World Bank. So we will remember that. Then to promote shared prosperity by increasing the incomes of poorest 40% of the people in every country. So uplifting poorest 40% of the globe is also the mission of World Bank. Friends, take it as a tip for the guesswork. Just because World Bank is a bank, the mission of World Bank is not related to any financial efficiency. It is basically related to development, that is eradicating poverty and hunger. So this point we will remember. Then move to the next one. The World Bank groups. First one, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. It provides loans, credits and grants for almost all the member countries. Then International Development Association provides low or no interest loans to low income countries. So India is also availing low or no interest loans from IDA. Then the International Financial Corporation provides investment, advice and asset management to companies and governments. So this IFC, it will invest some capital in some of the schemes of the member countries. So friends, in India, for the construction of dams, World Bank is a major partner. So in that context, the capital amount is being funded by the International Finance Corporation. Then the Multi-Guarantee Agency. This ensures the lenders and investors against political risks such as wars. So if two countries are being mutually investing in other countries, then if there are wars in the host country, then this MIGA or the Mutual Guarantee Agency, it will come and guarantee the assets that are being set up in the host country by the investing country. Then the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes. Yes friends, it also settles the disputes and it not only guarantees the properties in the host nation. And India is not a member of this ICID because India says that before going to any other multilateral judicial organizations, you will have to exhaust all the judicial procedures within India and then move outside. So India is against this ICID and we have to remember this fact. Then come to reports and publications provided by the World Bank. First one, the World Development Report. It is published annually by the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and that provides in-depth knowledge regarding the economic development of the world. Then the Global Economic Prospects. So this is a World Bank's semi-annual flagship publication. So this is semi-annual, that is twice in a year. Then Doing Business Report. It is a series of annual studies regarding the ease of doing business. So in this ease of doing business, India has improved considerably, and that fact we will remember. Then the Global Financial Development Report. This is also from the World Bank. Then Women, Business and the Law Report. So this is also from the World Bank, and Human Capital Index is also indexed from the World Bank itself. So all these reports we will remember. Then come to next one, the IMF. Friends, why was it in news? Because the IMF projected the growth rate of India for 2021 to be at 11.5%, predicting India to be the fastest growing economy in the fiscal year. So friends, IMF will always be in use for predicting the world's growth rate and also India's growth rate. So that is not a big thing. But however, in that context, we discuss the features of IMF. Now, coming to the structure of IMF. First one, the Board of Governors. Friends, members are appointed by the respective member countries. So in this Board of Governors, almost all the members are representatives of the member nations. Then friends, annually, the IMF and World Bank annual meeting takes place. And in this, the Board of Governors of IMF and Board of Governors of the World Bank, they come sit together and discuss regarding the world economic prospects. So this World Bank IMF annual meeting we will remember. Then come to next, Ministerial Committees. The International Monetary and Financial Committee. So this manages the international monetary and financial system. So the currency rates, then the IMF tranches, all these are maintained by this. And then Development Committee. This is set up to solve the issues in the developing countries. So the grants, loans for the developing countries are also provided by this Development Committee. So now friends, both IMF and World Bank, they provide loans, the less interest and no interest loans for the developing countries. Then Executive Board. It is a 24-member board that discusses all the aspects of the fund. So the day-to-day administration and major projects and the implementation of those projects are being taken up by the Executive Board. So this is all about the structure. Then come to next one, the functions of IMF. First one, the regulatory function. The IMF functions as a regulatory body, and it also focuses on administering a code of conduct for exchange rate policies and restrictions on the payments for current account transactions. So friends, the international currency exchange rates and then the current account transactions between two nations is being guarded, and the code of conduct is issued by the IMF because it is a neutral body and the power is handed over to it. So nothing special in that. Then financial function. IMF provides financial support and resources to the member countries to meet short-term and medium-term balance of payment disequilibrium. So if there is any variations in the balance of payment in any nation, this IMF will come forward and it will help financially. Then consultative functions. Friends, IMF is a center for international cooperation for the member countries. It also acts as a source of counsel for technical assistance. So along with the financial assistance, the economic and technical assistance is also being given. And friends, these are the reports that are being published by the IMF. First one is the World Economic Outlook. So this is a famous one, we all know that. Then the Global Financial Stability Report is also a famous one. And then Fiscal Monitor is also being released recently. Then the Global Policy Agenda was released in 2021. We don't know whether it will be released every year. So this was mainly due to the COVID-19 and other economic turmoils of the pandemic. So this is all about IMF. Then come to next one, Asian Development Bank. Friends, the ADB was conceived in the early 1960s as the financial institution that would be Asian in character. So almost all the Asian nations, they came together and they wanted one financial institution which is Asian in character. That is why the Asian Development Bank was born. Then it originated in United Nations Economic Commission for Asia and Far East, that is the UNECFA in 1963. So it was born under UNECFA in 1963. Then this resolution was passed at the first Ministerial Conference on Asian Economic Cooperation held by ECFA. Friends, even the Ministerial Conference on Asian Economic Cooperation, that is AEC, is also held by the ECFA. So that fact we will remember. Then the UN Economic Commission for Asia and Far East is presently known as the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific. The same UNE Cafe is called the UNESCAP now. So this fact is more important than anything else in this Asian Development Bank topic. Then the headquarters of Asian Development Bank is in Manila, Philippines. Then come to more facts regarding ADB. The functions. The primary mission is to foster growth and cooperation among the countries in Asia Pacific region. So not only Asia, the Asia Pacific region is also included. Then it provides assistance to its developing member countries, the private sector and the public-private partnerships. So friends, not only to the member countries, this ADB, it will also provide financial assistance for the private sector and also for the public-private partnerships as well. Then assistance is provided through grants, loans, technical assistance and equity investments to promote development. So along with the grants and loans, even the equity shares are also being invested. Then India was a founding member of ADB in 1966 and is now the bank's fourth largest shareholder. So this fourth largest shareholding we have to remember. Then ADB's operations in India commenced in 1986. So ADB set up a branch in India in 1986 after a long duration of around 20 years. Then India has been ADB's top borrower since 2010. So since 2010, India is the largest borrower from ADB. So these are some of the facts and here are some of the reports which are published by ADB. That is the first one, ADB annual report. This we can take a guess, so not so important. Then Asian Development Outlook. So just like the World Economic Outlook, Asian Development Outlook is published by the ADB, that is the Asian Development Bank. Then Key Indicators for Asia and the Pacific 2020. This was also published, but however this will not be published every year. Then Strategy 2030 was also published, and once again this was for achieving a prosperous, inclusive, resilient and sustainable Asia. So this was published only this year and it will not be published every year. So here those annual publishment are the annual report of ADB and the Asian Development Outlook. So these two facts will remember, and Asian Development Outlook has once been already asked by UPSC in prelims. So this is all about the Asian Development Bank. Then come to the last part. Friends, when we look at all these things that are going on in India, one lesson we learn is that financial constraint is the foremost problem which is hindering India. So how to come out of this financial problem? How to come out of financial constraints? It is only when every Indians, if we bend our head, work hard, pay the tax properly, and when we save the money and when we use it for the education and health rather than wasting it by loafing and merrymaking. And when we are wasting our even daily wages for drinking and other things, then we are unfit to live like the citizens of those developed countries like Switzerland, USA, New Zealand, etc. So the moment we realize that particular thing, India will be in the top of the world. So let's do our duty to realize it ourselves and also to communicate this to the fellow citizens. So we will do it. All the very best. Good luck, friends.